Welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. The scout ship Orion drifted silently through a forgotten stretch of space, where the debris of ancient battles hung like metallic ghosts, spinning endlessly in the infinite dark. Its hull bore the scars of survival, long gashes and scratches telling tales of near-death encounters. The engines whined with each faltering pulse, a labored gasp from a vessel that had run too long without rest. Elias Kane stood in the cockpit, his calloused hands gripping the controls, his thumb absently tracing an old crack in the metal. His piercing blue eyes scanned the flickering, static-filled screen, catching glints of light that whispered memories of a past he'd rather bury. In the distance, a massive Xytheri warship loomed out of the void, a warped silhouette, once a terror to humanity during 2 centuries of unrelenting war. Now, it was just a cold husk, its energy core pulsing faintly like the dying heartbeat of a beast. "Echo, signs of life," Elias commanded, his voice low and steady as stone, cutting through the cockpit's stillness. Echo, his AI companion, responded in its flat, emotionless tone. "No life detected, Captain. Only a faint signal from the Xytheri energy core, 1 kiloparsec out. Recommendation: depart. Survival odds below 30%. Elias smirked, a reckless glint flashing across his scarred face. "You're always such a pessimist, aren't you?" He checked the oxygen gauge on his suit. 5 hours left, enough to roll the dice one more time. He locked his helmet into place with a dry click that echoed in the cramped space. "Keep the ship steady. I'll be back." With a burst from the auxiliary thrusters, Elias launched out of Orion, his body cutting through the void like a silver arrow. The tether gleamed faintly, a fragile lifeline connecting him to his ship, his only tether to survival in this frigid universe. His magnetic boots hit the Xytheri hull with a dull thud, shattering the absolute silence. He stood tall, his gaze sweeping over armor that once shimmered like pearl, now dulled and pocked with scorch marks and gaping holes. This ship had been humanity's nightmare, armed with cannons that could tear space apart, and warriors who struck from the shadows with lethal precision. But now, it was wreckage, a grim reminder of the war Elias had fought to forget. He ignited his plasma cutter, a blue flame flaring like a tiny beacon in the dark, slicing through the hull with surgical precision. A pitch-black corridor yawned open before him, the Xytheri metal's sharp edges glinting under the weak glow of his helmet's light. The air inside was thick, laced with the acrid tang of burnt metal and an odd, earthy scent like a damp forest, alive and wild, stirring memories of distant planets he'd once trod as a soldier. Debris floated in the weightlessness, spinning lazily, catching his light in fleeting glimmers. Each step rang out like a drumbeat thud, stirring the dead silence. "Echo, any intel on this ship? Last report, distress signal?" he asked through the comms, his voice low but sharp. "Nothing, Captain," Echo replied, its tone as mechanical as ever. "This sector's quiet as a black hole." "That's not a good sign," Elias muttered under his breath, fogging his visor faintly. "Quiet's an opportunity." The corridor twisted through cold, broken turns, walls warped as if crushed by some monstrous force. His helmet's beams swept over battle scars, energy burns, gaping puncture wounds from projectiles, and streaks of silvery fluid dried on the floor like alien blood. He paused at a half-torn door, a faint purple glow seeping through a cracked wall beyond. Gripping his energy pistol, his finger brushed the trigger, his breathing steady in the helmet's echo. He advanced, slow and deliberate, a hunter stalking prey. His light flooded a small chamber, and the sight stopped his heart mid-beat. A Xytheri female warrior lay there, her slender frame radiating latent strength, her pale purple skin shimmering like a gem in the dim glow. Bioluminescent veins pulsed faintly across her body, flickering like a flame on the verge of extinction. One arm was pinned under rubble, jagged metal piercing her flesh, silver liquid pooling beneath, glinting like tears on the floor. Her large, emerald eyes locked onto Elias, defiant yet exhausted, the gaze of a wounded predator ready to fight to its last breath. She raised her free hand, slender fingers clutching an energy dagger, its purple blade flickering like a lethal warning. "End me, human!" Her voice rang out, soft but icy, like wind whispering through crystalline trees on an alien world. Elias aimed his pistol at her forehead, finger resting on the trigger, his breath slowing in the tense stillness. Time froze. His heartbeat thundered in sync with her faint gasps, reverberating in the cramped space. Logic screamed at him, "Pull the trigger, take the core, get out." A living Xytheri was a wild card, an enemy he'd been trained to kill without hesitation. But then he looked deeper into those emerald eyes. Beyond the defiance lay a profound pain, a loss he'd seen mirrored in himself days on the battlefield, comrades falling, leaving him alone amid the ashes. Elias lowered his gun slowly, his gaze unwavering. His other hand reached for his kit, pulling out a multi-species medpack, his rough fingers moving with swift precision. "I'm about to do something crazy," he said, his voice low but resolute, kneeling beside her. "But I don't kill someone who can't fight back." The Xytheri tilted her head, her glowing veins pulsing faintly, as if struggling to comprehend this anomaly. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling, the edge softening into confusion. Elias activated the med scanner, a holographic glow revealing fractured bones and damaged organs within her. "Because I've seen enough death," he replied, prepping a regenerative syringe, his eyes softening for a fleeting moment. "And I want to know who you are." As the needle pierced her pale purple skin, she hissed, her free hand clawing at the rubble, nails screeching against metal. But she didn't resist. The silver flow stopped, her veins brightening faintly, a spark of hope reigniting. "I am Syris," she said, her voice small but clear, her emerald eyes now a mix of wariness and gratitude. Elias nodded, standing as his helmet's light cast shadows over his scarred face. "I'm Elias. And we need to get out of here before this ship blows." A deafening explosion roared from afar, a wounded beast's bellow shaking the abandoned Xytheri ship. Shards of jagged metal rained down, clattering against the floor with piercing screeches that echoed in the tight space. Elias whipped around, his helmet's beams slicing through the chaos. Sparks flared from torn walls, a prelude to collapse. Echo's voice crackled through the comms, cold but urgent. "Captain, Xytheri patrol ship detected. 2 minutes to scanning range." Elias locked eyes with Syris, his blue gaze piercing through the flickering dark. Without hesitation, he extended a hand, his grip firm and unyielding. "Can you move?" Syris hesitated, her bioluminescent veins pulsing weakly, a dying flame clinging to life. She stared at his hand, suspicion flickering in her emerald eyes, then grasped it, her slender fingers wrapping around his wrist with surprising strength. With a grunt of effort, she hauled herself up, legs trembling but defiant. "You won't sell me to your kind?" she asked, her voice quivering yet sharp, a blade hidden in a breeze. Elias pulled her close, his helmet's light illuminating his scarred face. "Not today," he said, his tone low and steady, carrying an unexpected promise. "Today, we're allies." They bolted through the shadowed corridors, the energy core's wail growing louder behind them, a monstrous growl awakening from a deep slumber. Elias led the charge, magnetic boots anchoring him to the floor, each step a steady beat amid the chaos. Syris followed close, staggering, silver droplets from her wound glinting on the scorched metal. The hallway shuddered, walls groaning and cracking as if ready to shatter. A purple glow flared from afar, the core overloading, poised to devour everything in a lethal blaze. Another blast erupted, closer now, tilting the floor violently and throwing them forward. Elias slammed into a wall, the impact ringing through his suit, but he spun back, his light pinning Syris. She was trapped under a fallen slab, its razor edge inches from her throat. Her veins pulsed wildly, purple light mirroring her pain and desperation. Elias lunged, his rugged hand seizing the slab's edge, muscles straining as he heaved it upward. Sweat streaked inside his helmet, his breath ragged through the filters. "Move!" he barked, voice hoarse with exertion. Syris clenched her teeth, clawing at the floor, nails scraping metal with shrill streaks. She dragged herself free, stumbling to her feet, her veins flickering like a fire refusing to die. Elias dropped the slab with a thunderous crash, grabbed her hand again, and yanked her onward. The core's scream became deafening, a machine's death knell ready to rupture. They raced through the final twists, debris pelting them, leaving scratches on Elias's suit and Syris's armor. They reached the breach Elias had cut earlier just as the core erupted, a blinding purple wave swallowing the dark like a tidal wave of doom. Elias triggered his tether, movements swift and precise, the silver line snapping taut to Orion. He locked an arm around Syris's waist, pulling her tight, and hit the launch. They shot out of the Xytheri ship, soaring through the void as the patrol ship's engines roared behind them, closer than ever. A crimson energy beam slashed past, nearly severing the tether. Elias gritted his teeth, the blast's vibrations rippling through the line, but he held Syris fast, refusing to let go. They crashed into Orion's bay with a jarring thud, Elias hitting the floor hard, back slamming against cold metal, Syris gasping beside him. He scrambled up, diving into the pilot's seat, hands flying across controls as the ship trembled violently. "Echo, full throttle! Get us into the interference zone!" he shouted, voice overpowering the engine's screech. Orion surged forward, engines roaring like a wounded beast pushed beyond its limits, plunging into a thick cosmic dust cloud, a shield against their pursuers. Syris curled up nearby, clutching her injured arm, her veins pulsing like faint stars in the night, each glow a labored breath. Elias shot her a glance, a faint grin breaking through the tension. "You owe me an explanation," he said, his voice low but laced with dry humor. "And I'd like it before we're both space dust." The Xytheri patrol wasn't giving up. Crimson beams lanced from its nose, tearing through space, rocking Orion like a toy in a storm. Echo reported, calm yet urgent. "Their range is closing. Escape odds 18%. Elias clenched his jaw, hands a blur on the controls, weaving through floating wreckage. A massive chunk grazed the hull, a jarring boom startling Syris, but Elias didn't flinch. "Never tell me the odds, Echo!" he growled, irritation fueling his focus. He yanked the ship into a sharp turn, aiming straight for a hulking asteroid, its jagged surface looming like a wall of death. Syris gripped the armrest, panic flashing in her eyes, but Elias's calm held steady. As the patrol ship accelerated after them, he slammed the brakes, engines screaming in protest. The enemy overshot, smashing into the asteroid in a fiery collision, red and purple light erupting behind. In that chaos, Elias eased Orion deeper into the interference zone, their signal fading from enemy radar, leaving only the heavy silence of the cockpit. As the patrol ship's roar faded into the interference zone's oppressive quiet, Elias let his shoulders slump, the tension in his frame unwinding. He turned to Syris, his blue eyes scanning her in the cockpit's dim light. She sat hunched in the co-pilot's seat, slender hands trembling as they probed the wound on her arm, where silver blood had dried into a shimmering streak on her pale purple skin. Her bioluminescent veins pulsed slowly, regaining rhythm like a lighthouse after a storm. "You okay?" Elias asked, his voice low but tinged with rare concern, a crack in the armor of a man used to surviving alone. Syris looked up, her emerald eyes meeting his, purple light glinting in the cramped space. She nodded faintly, but wariness lingered in her gaze, a wild creature unsure of its rescuer. "I don't understand you, Elias," she said, her voice soft yet sharp, like wind through crystalline trees on her distant homeworld. "Humans slaughter us without mercy. I've seen your ships shred our fleets, turn warriors to ash among the stars. Why are you different?" Elias leaned back, exhaling heavily, the sound rough in the confined air. He ran a hand through his dusty short hair, his eyes distant, lost in a past he tried to outrun. "I was a soldier once," he said, his tone even but weighted with something heavy. "Killed more Xytheri than I care to count, nameless faces, purple lights snuffed out by my hand. I thought it was duty, protecting humanity. But war's never that clean. Now I'm just a drifter, scraping by on wrecks, cores, anything to buy another day. Maybe I'm just tired of blood and death, of waking up wondering how many I've buried to keep breathing." He paused, his gaze snapping back to Syris, searching her face as if she held an answer he couldn't find. Syris fell silent, her hands stilling on her wound, her veins pulsing slower, as if his words had struck a chord deep within. She bowed her head, silver-gray hair spilling over her face, and when she spoke, her voice was a near whisper. "I am Syris, of the Xytheri High Council's Guard. That ship we escaped it wasn't just a wreck. It carried something neither humans nor Xytheri were meant to know, a secret that could change everything." Elias's brow furrowed, curiosity igniting in him like a spark. "What?" he pressed, his voice low but commanding, an edge that brooked no evasion. Syris hesitated, her trembling hand reaching into her torn armor, slender fingers fumbling in a hidden slit beneath metallic scales. She pulled out a small crystal, no bigger than a fist, its deep purple glow seeming to drink the cockpit's light. It hovered between them, radiating an unseen energy that made the air hum, a storm's murmur on the horizon. "This is the Void Core," she said, her voice quaking yet reverent. "A device that bends space-time. My guard unit was testing it when we were attacked not by humans, as I assumed, but by our own kind." Elias stared at the crystal, its purple light reflecting in his eyes, a chill racing down his spine as if he'd brushed against something beyond this reality. "You mean a civil war?" he asked, his voice dropping, each word a blade slicing the air. Syris nodded, her eyes darkening, memories of the assault flashing before her. "A faction in the High Council wants to use it to erase humanity, twist time, undo our losses, rewrite history in your blood. Others, like me, want it destroyed, knowing its power can't be tamed. But those who attacked us, they weren't either side. They were something else, a shadow I can't name." Before Elias could press further, a sharp beep cut through the silence from the console. Echo's voice broke in, cold but edged with rare urgency. "Captain, the crystal's emitting a coded signal." Elias and Syris locked eyes, a tense heartbeat passing between them like soldiers sensing an ambush. "Decode it," Elias ordered, his voice hard as steel, gripping the chair's edge. Echo projected a stream of Xytheri glyphs onto the screen, curving, glowing lines like the veins on Syris's skin. She leaned closer, hands shaking as she deciphered each symbol, her eyes widening with every word. "Void plan activated. Fleet inbound. Prepare for invasion," she translated, her voice trembling like wind over a ravaged field, fear bleeding through her composure. Elias shot to his feet, the chair rattling under his force, his gaze sharp as a blade. "What fleet? Xytheri?" he demanded, suspicion and anger simmering in his tone. Syris shook her head, panic flaring in her eyes, her veins pulsing wildly as if echoing her dread. "No," she whispered, barely audible over the engine's hum. "Something else, from beyond known borders. Something neither humans nor Xytheri are ready to face." Elias clenched his fists, knuckles whitening under his gloves, his eyes darting to the crystal as if it were a ticking bomb. "So what do we do with it?" he asked, his voice low but resolute, a man staring down the abyss. Syris gazed at the crystal, its purple light dancing in her eyes, and when she spoke, her voice steadied, a warrior finding purpose in the storm. "I must take it to Xena's Station, a secret outpost of my faction, hidden deep in the northern nebula. Only they know how to disable it, to stop the disaster it could unleash." Elias nodded slowly, his gaze unwavering, as if stepping onto a path with no return. "Then we go," he said, his hands settling on the controls, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Elias tapped the console swiftly, his sharp eyes scanning the radar, where a faint Alliance signal blinked then faded behind the dust cloud. "Echo, lock coordinates for Xena Station," he commanded, his voice low but firm. Orion shuddered as its engines flared, surging out of the interference zone, leaving unanswered distress calls in its wake. The Orion streaked through space, its engines whining with a frail but defiant hum, slicing through the endless dark like a battered silver arrow still aiming for its mark. Cosmic dust clouds whipped past the windshield, glinting faintly under distant starlight, guiding them toward the coordinates Syris had provided Xena's Station, the last hope to neutralize the Void Core. Elias sat at the controls, his calloused hands locked on the helm, his piercing blue eyes scanning the radar, where an eerie calm held sway. Syris sat beside him, her slender hands cradling her injured arm, the purple glow of her veins pulsing slowly, a survivor's heartbeat after brushing death. That calm didn't last. A massive explosion roared behind them, a beast jolted awake, shaking the ship violently. Crimson energy beams tore through space, slamming into Orion's hull, leaving blackened scorch marks on its already scarred surface. Echo's voice blared through the system, cold but urgent. "Captain, 3 unidentified ships just emerged. No Xytheri or Alliance signatures." Elias lunged into action, hands flashing across the controls, his gaze razor-sharp on the screen. 3 red dots pulsed menacingly, closing in with terrifying speed. "Who are they?" he growled, his voice low but brimming with pressure, a loaded gun ready to fire. Syris leaned toward the display, her veins flaring brightly, a fire stoked by a sudden gust. She squinted, her emerald eyes widening as she recognized the bizarre shapes, sleek, black hulls that rippled like liquid shadow, tendrils of metal writhing at their prows, ancient horrors dredged from the cosmic deep. "It's them," she whispered, her voice trembling yet certain, heavy with dread. "The ones who attacked my ship. The Invaders." Elias shot her a glance, skepticism flickering, but the raw edge in her tone silenced his doubts. The 3 Invaders' ships charged, their crimson beams lancing out like a fiery deluge, shredding floating debris in a storm of destruction. One grazed Orion, tilting it hard, the hull groaning in protest. Elias gritted his teeth, weaving the ship through space with the precision of a man forged by countless battles. Another beam struck true, piercing the auxiliary engine, rocking the ship as sparks erupted from the console, smoke curling thickly. "Echo status!" Elias shouted, his voice cutting through the alarm's wail. "Auxiliary engine offline." Echo replied, its calm tinged with rare urgency. "Speed down 40%. Survival odds 5%. Elias gripped the helm tighter, sweat beading on his brow, his eyes darting to Syris. She clung to her seat, her veins pulsing wildly, mirroring the peril closing in. "Can you use that thing?" he asked, his voice low and sharp, nodding at the void core in her hands, its deep purple glow a captive star. Syris nodded, her trembling fingers tightening around the crystal, its light bathing her face in a fierce, weary resolve. "I can trigger a short space-time pulse," she said, her voice small but steady. "It'll slow them down. But it'll drain me." Elias locked eyes with her, his gaze hard as steel. "Do it," he ordered unflinching, a commander with no retreat. Syris closed her eyes, her breathing slowing as if melding with something vast. Her veins blazed, purple light surging from her like an invisible tide, flooding the cockpit and spilling into space. The crystal trembled, unleashing a strange energy wave that warped the air around them. Space-twisted crimson beams slowed mid-flight, the Invaders' ships moving as if trapped in molasses, their metallic tendrils thrashing in sluggish torment. Elias seized the moment. He slammed the throttle forward, Orion lurching ahead with its remaining power, threading through a narrow gap between 2 massive asteroids, jagged relics scarred by eons. A stray rock clipped the hull, a jarring boom resounding, but Elias held course, his focus icy. He engaged the signal cloak, Orion's radar signature fading into the dense dust cloud behind. As they slipped beyond range, faint explosions echoed, the Invaders losing their prey. Syris collapsed to the floor, her glow dimming rapidly, a flame snuffed by a cold wind. Elias darted to her, catching her before she hit fully, his hands gripping her shoulders, concern flashing across his scarred face. "You good?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. Syris managed a weak smile, her breath ragged, her emerald eyes clouded with exhaustion. "I'll live," she murmured, her voice a wisp of smoke. "But they won't stop. They want the core." Elias eyed the crystal, its purple light casting an uneasy sheen on him. "Then we beat them to zenith," he said, his tone a vow carved in stone. But before he could return to the helm, Echo interrupted, its voice sharp. "Captain, distress signal from an Alliance ship, 2 parsecs out. They're requesting contact." Elias frowned, gripping the chair, his gaze flicking to Syris. "If they see you, they'll kill you," he said low and wary. Syris clutched his arm, her cold hand tight around his wrist. "I can hide," she whispered, her eyes fierce despite her frailty. But if they can help us… Elias nodded slowly, his resolve unshaken. Open the channel, he commanded Echo, his voice hard as iron. But watch it. A beep sounded, and a cold, deep voice crackled through. This is the patrol ship Aegis. We've detected your signal. Identify yourself. Elias took a breath, his sharp eyes fixed on the blank screen. Elias Kane, Captain of Orion, he replied, steady but edged with defiance. We were hit by unidentified ships. Need assistance. A pause followed, static hissing like a warning. Prepare for approach, the voice finally said. But we'll inspect your vessel. Elias turned to Syris, whispering through gritted teeth. Get ready to hide. The Aegis loomed out of the void like a metallic titan, its hull glinting with the blue glow of plasma cannons, sharp edges cutting through the cosmic dust. Orion, small and battered, was dragged into its hangar by a magnetic field, its engines whimpering like a final plea. Elias stood at the hatch, his tall frame stark in the dim light, one hand gripping an energy pistol hidden behind his back, his thumb brushing its cold metal. Syris had vanished into a secret compartment beneath the floor, her purple glow extinguished by a Xytheri cloaking trick, rendering her a shadow. Elias dipped his head, murmuring through the comms, voice low as a breeze. Don't move! The hatch slid open with a harsh hiss, a blast of cold air from the Aegis rushing in, thick with the scent of burnt metal and machine oil. A squad of Alliance soldiers marched forward, their magnetic boots clanking in unison thud a war machine's heartbeat. Leading them was Captain Mira Voss, a towering woman with cropped silver hair framing a stern face, her eyes cutting like razors as they sized up Elias. She crossed her arms, her Alliance armor gleaming, and spoke in a voice cold as ice. Elias Kane. Once our best, a legend from the fire pit of 49. Now a scavenger skulking among the stars. What happened to your ship? Elias shrugged, a slow, deliberate move dripping with nonchalance, his blue eyes never leaving hers. Got jumped by something not from around here, he said, his tone flat, recounting an old tale. Ship's busted, fuel's low. Need repairs and supplies to see another day. Mira tilted her head, her gaze probing Orion's charred hull and smoking console, hunting for cracks in his story. Search it, she snapped to her team, her voice a blade leaving no room for dissent. The soldiers fanned out, plasma rifles glinting in their hands, blue light from the barrels dancing on the floor. Elias kept his cool, hands loose at his sides, but his pulse hammered, each beat a war drum in his skull. One soldier neared the hidden compartment, boots pausing mere steps from Syris's refuge. He bent down, reaching for a panel, his helmet's beam grazing the seam. Elias's fist clenched, breath steadying, poised to act. Then a shrill beep erupted from the system, an echo cut in, voice frigid. Alert! Radiation leak from auxiliary engine. Recommend immediate evacuation. The soldiers froze, eyes darting between Elias and Mira, suspicion thick in the air. Myra's brow furrowed, her piercing stare locking onto Elias, a wolf scenting prey. What are you hiding, Kane? She asked, her voice dropping, a silent threat laced in every word. Elias flashed a faint grin, a flicker on his scarred face, his eyes unyielding. Just an old engine ready to blow, he said, light but daring. Check it if you want. Don't blame me if you lose a few men. Mira hesitated, her gaze sweeping her team, then nodded curtly. Pull back. Fix his ship. But I want answers. The repair crew set to work, metal clanging and welders hissing in the hangar. Elias stood still, tracking every move, his mind racing how to escape without exposure. Mira stepped closer, boots ringing on the floor, stopping before him. What were those ships? She demanded, her voice low and cutting, a knife at his throat. Elias recounted the attack calmly, omitting Syris and the core, sticking to the black ships, red beams, and the chase. Mira nodded slowly, her eyes darkening. We've seen them too, she said, her voice fading into thought. Not Xytheri, not Alliance. Something bigger's brewing, Kane. You sure you've got nothing else? Elias tensed, but his face stayed a frozen lake. "What do you know about them?" he countered, curiosity genuine beneath his gravelly tone. Mira studied him, her gaze piercing. "Only that they don't belong here," she replied, cold as ever. "And they're hunting something I think you're holding back." Elias shrugged again, that faint grin returning, though his heart pounded as Mira turned away, leaving him feeling transparent. As the crew worked, Elias slipped to the hidden compartment, eyes scanning for watchers. He knelt, lifting the panel, his helmet's dim light falling on Syris. She huddled in the tight space, her purple skin grayed by the cloak, her emerald eyes tense. "I heard them," she whispered, barely a breath. "They suspect you." Elias nodded, his gaze firm. "We've got to bail before they find you," he said, low and resolute, closing the panel with a soft click. But then a massive explosion rocked the Aegis, the floor lurching violently. Alarms screamed, red lights flashing in the hangar. Echoes shouted through the comms. "Captain, invaders attacking! 3 more ships!" Elias bolted to the cockpit, hands seizing the helm, eyes sweeping the radar. Outside, black ships with writhing tendrils charged, crimson beams tearing space, slamming into Aegis's hull. Myra's voice roared over the comms, cutting through the chaos. "All hands to battle stations! Open fire!" The Aegis shuddered as a beam struck its bow, debris scattering into the void. Elias turned to Syris, emerging from her hideout, her veins flickering faintly but fiercely. "We've got to help them," he said, his voice low and ironclad. "Or we're all dead." Syris clutched the void core, its purple light highlighting her emerald eyes, now ablaze with purpose. "I'll activate it," she replied, small but steely. "But this time you fight with me." Elias nodded, their gazes locking, a silent pact forged on the edge of survival. Orion and Aegis floated in the void, 2 fragile specks against the 3 monstrous shadows of the invaders, death machines hurtling forward with terrifying speed, carving through the dark like sharpened blades. Their black hulls shimmered, liquid-like, tendrils thrashing at their prows, emitting an eerie screech that echoed through space. Elias gripped Orion's helm, his rugged hands steady, his blue eyes locked on the radar's pulsing red dots. Crimson beams lashed out, streaking toward them like hellfire arrows, leaving trails of ruin. He clenched his jaw, weaving Orion through the chaos, the ship trembling as beams grazed past, metal groaning under strain. Syris stood beside him, legs shaky but planted firm, her slender hands clutching the void core, its deep purple glow a living pulse in her grasp. Her veins flared wildly, mirroring the fire in her emerald eyes. "I can create a distortion field," she said, her voice small but resolute, rising above Orion's engine whine. "It'll throw off their aim." Elias shot her a glance, a rare spark of trust in his sharp gaze. "Do it," he commanded, his tone a decisive slash, leaving no room for doubt. Syris closed her eyes, her breath steadying as if syncing with a cosmic rhythm. Her veins ignited, purple light surging from her like a living flame, flooding the cockpit and beyond. The crystal quivered, unleashing an invisible wave that warped space itself. The air twisted, crimson beams bent mid-flight, snaking harmlessly past Aegis and Orion, crashing into debris with dazzling bursts. Myra's voice crackled through the comms, urgent and stunned. "Kane, what the hell's happening?" Elias's lip twitched, a grim smirk amid the strain. "Don't ask, just shoot," he barked, his voice a whip cracking through the chaos. Aegis unleashed its arsenal, plasma cannons flaring blue, beams tearing through space and slamming into one invader ship. The blast pierced its black shell, a blinding explosion scattering shards and tendrils like a dark rain among the stars. Elias tightened his grip, adrenaline surging like wildfire through his veins. But the remaining 2 ships pressed on, their counterattack ferocious, crimson beams hammering faster, more precise, adapting to Syris's field. A beam struck Orion, ripping into its side, smoke billowing from the console. Sparks flew, alarms blaring red. Echo's voice cut through. "Navigation down 50%. Main engine overheating. We're done for." Elias gritted his teeth, hands trembling on the controls, but his resolve held like iron. He turned to Syris, only to see her crumple, hands shaking around the core, her glow fading fast a candle in a gale. "Syris!" he shouted, lunging to catch her, his grip firm on her shoulders as her fragile frame quaked with exhaustion. His eyes fell on the crystal in her hands, its faint purple pulse calling to him. Without a second thought, Elias snatched it, his rough fingers closing tight. A strange energy surged through him, icy and searing, merging with his will, coursing through every vein and nerve. He felt it, the space-time power Syris had described, alien yet instinctive, a buried strength awakening. "If you can do it, so can I," he growled, his voice low and fierce, closing his eyes as she had. A colossal pulse erupted from the core, a purple wave bursting from Elias's hands, shredding the space ahead. It slammed into the second invader's ship, piercing its hull, triggering a blinding explosion, debris spiraling like a cosmic vortex. Myra's voice crackled through, awestruck. "Kane, what did you just do?" Elias didn't answer, his breath heaving, focus locked on the last ship. He pushed Orion forward, engines screaming in their death throes, metal shrieking as it neared collapse. Syris lifted her head, her eyes dim but burning with will. "Target their core," she rasped, her trembling hand pointing at the screen. Elias nodded, squeezing the void core again, its energy surging like a tidal wave within him. He focused, his mind a honed blade, and unleashed a second pulse. The purple wave roared forth, striking the final invader's heart, erupting in a dazzling blast, red and purple light mingling, a fleeting supernova in the dark. As the smoke cleared, Aegis and Orion drifted in silence, invader wreckage floating like remnants of a vanquished nightmare. Orion's engines faded to a whisper, blending with the stillness. Myra's voice came through again, low with reluctant respect. "Kane, I don't know how you pulled that off, but get up here now. You need to see something." Elias panted, still clutching the core, his gaze falling to Syris, curled on the floor. "Stay here," he murmured, his voice softer, a shield over her. But Syris shook her head, her weak hand grasping his, her glow flickering back, fragile but fierce. "I'm with you," she said, her voice small but unyielding, her emerald eyes alight with unbreakable resolve. "They need the truth about the core, the invaders, everything." Elias met her gaze, his eyes softening briefly, then nodded, a pact sealed beyond words, binding them in a fight no longer theirs alone. The command deck of the Aegis was a frigid expanse, bathed in the blue glow of control screens, the hum of ventilation a steady breath from a colossal machine. Mira led Elias and Syris, now unhidden through metallic corridors, her magnetic boots clanking with a dry, ominous rhythm, a drumbeat heralding something dire. Elias strode beside her, his piercing blue eyes scanning the surroundings, hand clutching the void core in his pocket, its cold pulse seeping through the fabric. Syris trailed behind, her pale purple skin flickering faintly, her emerald eyes wide with vigilance, a warrior stepping into enemy territory. They halted before a massive screen at the deck's heart, its glassy surface reflecting Elias's scarred face and Syris's purple glow. The Alliance crew flinched at her presence, plasma rifles snapping up, blue barrels glinting with lethal intent. "Xytheri!" one soldier barked, voice quaking with hate and fear. Mira raised a hand, her gesture sharp as a blade, her razor gaze sweeping the room. "Lower your weapons," she ordered, her voice low and steely. "They just saved us. Without them, Aegis would be ash among the stars." The soldiers wavered, eyes darting between Mira and Syris, then relented, rifles dropping with a metallic clatter in the taut silence. Mira tapped the console swiftly, and the screen flared to life, projecting data from a scout drone, blurry but chilling. A vast invader fleet filled the void, hundreds of black, liquid-like ships hovering near a gargantuan space gate at the galaxy's edge. Metal tendrils writhed at their prows, red lights pulsing from cannons like the eyes of awakening beasts. Elias narrowed his eyes, the core's purple glow in his pocket seeming to thrum in sync with the display. "What's this?" he demanded, his voice low but pressing, a soldier seeking truth amid chaos. Mira turned to him, her gaze darkening, as if peering into an abyss. "We picked this up after the attack," she replied, her voice sinking, each word a stone in still water. "They're not just stragglers like we thought. This is an invasion force, beyond anything the Alliance or Xytheri have faced." Syris stepped closer, her veins flaring wildly, her emerald eyes widening in panic. "The Void Core," she whispered, her voice trembling like wind over a ravaged plain. "It's the key to that gate. The High Council built it, but they didn't know they were being used." Elias's brow furrowed, his sharp gaze locking onto her, fingers tightening around the core. "Used by who?" he asked, his voice a low, cutting edge, ready for any answer. Mira entered more commands, the screen shifting to reveal a new code, intricate Xytheri glyphs laced with a familiar symbol, the Alliance's 5-pointed star, buried in the data. "By us," she said, her voice icy but laced with hidden pain. "A faction within the Alliance secretly allied with the Invaders, trading tech and intel for power. They betrayed humanity and maybe Xytheri too for their own greed." Elias clenched his fists, knuckles whitening under his gloves, his eyes storm-dark with fury. "So both our kinds got played?" he growled, his voice low but seething, a wounded beast spotting the true enemy. Syris nodded slowly, her gaze sweeping the screen, as if watching her people's fate dissolve. "We have to warn the High Council and the Alliance," she said, her voice small but firm, a flicker of fire in the dark. "Or everything's gone, not just us, but this whole galaxy." The air grew heavy, the systems hum a silent warning. Elias and Syris locked eyes, a tense moment passing between them, two souls shouldering a colossal burden. But before they could plan, an officer at the console shouted, voice piercing the din. "Captain, signal from Alliance Command! They're ordering Kane and the Xytheri detained immediately." Mira spun to Elias, her eyes torn between doubt and helplessness. "They know you've got something," she said, her voice low, an unspoken apology in her tone. "I can't shield you anymore, Kane." Elias met Syris's gaze, his resolve hardening to steel, then gave a quick nod. "Then we run," he said, his voice low and fierce, a soldier charging into the final fight. They turned, bolting from the deck, Elias's boots and Syris's light steps echoing on metal. But as they reached the exit, a squad blocked their path, plasma rifles raised, blue barrels flashing like a death sentence. Elias didn't flinch. He drew his pistol from behind, firing twice. Blue bolts tore through the air, dropping two soldiers with brief cries. Syris lunged, her hand flaring purple as she drew her energy dagger, its blade slicing through another, blood spraying in weightless droplets like red gems. They didn't stop, racing through chaotic halls, alarms shrieking, red lights pulsing like a ship in panic. They dove into Orion, the hatch slamming shut with a resounding bang, a farewell to Aegis. Elias hit the pilot's seat, hands a blur on the controls. "Echo, launch now!" he roared, drowning out the engine's whine. Orion shuddered, blasting out of Aegis's bay at breakneck speed, dodging plasma beams from former allies, blue streaks ripping space, nearly grazing the hull. Elias gritted his teeth, weaving through the chaos, his focus unyielding. Beside him, Syris gripped the armrest, her glow faint but her emerald eyes blazing. They were fugitives now, but the horrific truth they carried was the galaxy's last hope. Blue plasma beams chased Orion, shredding space behind, but Elias floored the throttle, slaloming through a thick cosmic dust cloud, their signal fading from Aegis's radar. Distant blasts dimmed, swallowed by the dark, as he turned to Syris, his sharp eyes weary. "We're not clear yet," he said, voice low, hands still on the helm, steering toward Zenith Station's final coordinates. Orion drifted through space, its hull a patchwork of burns and punctures from prior battles, engines wheezing like a dying man's gasps. The battered ship cut through the void, racing toward the coordinates Syris had given Zenith Station, a faint light amid an encroaching storm. Elias sat in the cockpit, the console's dim glow casting shadows on his scarred face. He'd shed part of his suit, revealing a gash on his shoulder, a jagged tear from Aegis debris, crusted with dried blood. He wrapped it with a med strip, his rugged hands moving with slow precision, his blue eyes flickering with rare fatigue. Across from him, Syris sat curled, her slender fingers tracing the void core, its purple shimmer pulsing faintly in her grasp, a captive star trembling with power. "Who can we trust now?" Elias asked, his voice low and cutting, slicing through the cockpit's heavy silence. He tied off the bandage, his gaze shifting to Syris, seeking an anchor in the chaos they'd endured. She looked up, her emerald eyes meeting his, her glow pulsing slowly, a survivor's rhythm after a nightmare. "Just each other," she replied, her voice small but certain, carrying an unspoken bond. "But at Zenith, I have allies, those who want peace, who know the Void Core isn't a weapon, but a curse." Elias nodded slowly, his eyes softening briefly, accepting the tie forged between them across species lines. Space ahead brightened as they neared Zenith Station, a colossal structure veiled in a dense nebula, purple-hued dust clouds shimmering like a cosmic shroud. Crystal spires soared from its core, their deep purple glow casting ribbons of light across the surface, a river on an alien world. Orion touched down on a landing pad, metal clanging harshly, engines falling silent in the oppressive quiet. The hatch opened, and a group of Xytheri approached, slender yet powerful figures, their purple skin aglow under the station's light. Leading them was Calith, a tall warrior with deep purple skin like polished amethyst, her amber eyes sweeping over Elias with cold suspicion. "You brought a human here?" Calith asked, her voice low and icy, wind through crystalline trees on Xytheri's lost home. She crossed her arms, her armor glinting, her gaze fixed on Elias like he was a bomb primed to blow. Syris stepped forward, her glow flaring, hands raised to calm. "He's not the enemy," she said, her voice small but steady. "He saved me, and I saved him. We brought the Void Core to disable it, to stop the Invaders." She held out the crystal, its purple light bathing Calith's stern face. Calith's eyes flickered doubt warring with acceptance, then she nodded slowly. "We'll neutralize it," she said, her tone softening. "But there's bad news, the High Council's compromised. The Invaders know of Zenith, and they're coming." Her words hung unfinished as space around Zenith Station quaked, the universe itself snarling in rage. A massive gate tore open in the distance, red light swallowing the dark, and the invader fleet emerged, dozens of black ships surging forward, tendrils thrashing like an ancient horror's arms, red cannons pulsing like predatory eyes. Elias raced to an observation window, his sharp eyes scanning the enemy armada, hand gripping his pistol. "Get ready to fight!" he roared, his voice low but overpowering the alarms shrieking through the station. He and Syris joined the Xytheri forces, sprinting through gleaming crystal corridors, Elias's boots and Syris's light steps ringing out. They leapt into Orion, Elias firing up the ship as Syris clutched the core. He triggered its pulses, purple waves erupting from Orion, slamming into the invader fleet. One ship exploded in blinding light, debris spiraling in space, but the enemy pressed on relentlessly. Syris synced with Calith via comms, her voice urgent. "Raise the shield!" Xytheri tech flared, a purple energy dome encasing Zenith, deflecting red beams that burst midair like deadly fireworks. The battle raged, explosions echoing through the nebula, red and purple lights clashing in space. Elias piloted Orion through the fray, hands lightning fast, each pulse he fired shattering another enemy ship. Syris stood by, her glow blazing, her emerald eyes fierce as she fed the core's power into the systems. But then came a twist. Calith burst into Orion's cockpit from Zenith's control hub, her amber eyes dark with pain and desperation. "I'm sorry, Syris," she said, voice trembling yet resolute. "This is the only way to save our people." Before Syris could react, Calith snatched the Void Core, her strong hand closing around it. Elias spun, his blue eyes blazing with fury, lunging to stop her. But Calith was faster, drawing a small Xytheri shock pistol from her armor and firing. A purple bolt slammed into Elias's chest, his body convulsing, eyes dimming as he crumpled to the floor with a heavy thud. Syris screamed, rushing to him, but Calith's tall frame vanished through the hatch, taking the core and leaving them amid the unresolved chaos of battle.